Outside, the rain lashed hard against the roof, while inside room number 5, the breath of two souls from opposite worlds tangled together. Clara, the black woman once cast out by her own father, carrying the shame of years past, trembled in her thin nightdress, soaked through with rain. William, the eldest son, sauce of the Harlow family, burdened with duty and honor, stood frozen, his eyes blazing as a single drop slid from her shoulder down to her neck. He bent low, lips catching that drop, leaving a mark hotter than the fire in the hearth. Clara let out a soft moan, her hand gripping his shoulder tight. On the narrow bed, two lives once torn apart by prejudice now clung to each other, giving not only their bodies, but a silent vow. Tonight, their love was stronger than any storm outside. That afternoon, the late sun poured down over the small garden behind Murphy's General Store, a place where strangers sometimes stopped to read their mail or steal a moment of quiet from the dusty town. It was not much of a garden, just a few old oaks, a couple of worn benches, and flower beds kept with little care. But for Clara Johnson, a black woman who had lived through years of scorn, it was a refuge. She sat beneath the largest oak, a sketchboard across her knees, charcoal sliding over paper. She was used to hiding, carving out pockets of stillness to breathe. Beyond the garden, in every look cast her way in Millbrook, she could still feel the sting of mockery and suspicion. Here, at least, she could draw in peace, no one to disturb her. But today, someone appeared. Clara noticed him the moment he stepped through the gate. He was nothing like the ranch hands in their sun-bleached shirts and dust-scarred boots. This man carried himself differently. A dark, earth-toned vest fit snug across broad shoulders, his black boots polished to a shine, and the way he sat, back straight, a leather-bound book resting in hand. Everything about him spoke of restraint, of control. He turned each page slowly, long fingers moving with a care that seemed afraid to damage the paper. Sunlight broke through the branches, scattering across his dark hair, flashing streaks of silver. Clara realized she had been still for nearly half an hour, but her hand had not stopped sketching. Line by line, his face came alive. The straight bridge of his nose, the firm cut of his jaw, the broad brow shadowed with quiet sorrow. Charcoal followed the small creases at his eyes, the kind only close watching could find. Clara did not know his name. What she captured was more than form, something patient, tender, and perhaps lonely. Her pulse quickened whenever he shifted, whenever the light changed on his features. She told herself she would tuck this sketch away, bury it like the dozens she had hidden before. But when she marked the final shade at the corner of his mouth, another thought rose. If she never gave it, it would remain nothing more than a secret to deepen her solitude. Clara drew a breath and stood. She walked slowly along the grass path. Her old shoes scraped against dry ground. When her shadow fell across his page, he looked up. His eyes, deep brown and warm as winter coffee, caught hers. For a moment her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the paper. She held out the sketch, voice rough. "Forgive me. I drew you." The man set his book down on the bench. He took the page, surprise flickering in his gaze as his own likeness stared back, rendered in rough strokes, yet full of life. His finger brushed the edge, then paused, as though uncertain anyone had truly seen inside him. He rose suddenly, so quick the book slipped into the grass. Before Clara could retreat, his broad shoulders loomed close, the scent of leather and dust warm around her. He pulled her into an embrace, sudden, strong, yet not harsh. The fragile sketch pressed between them trembled like her racing heart. "God above," he whispered, voice low and raw, "you've made me look like a man worth knowing." Clara froze. All her life she had bowed beneath scorn, avoided the cruel weight of others' eyes. No one had ever held her like this, not with demand, not with pity, but with a simple, unguarded warmth. He let her go slowly, though his hand lingered on her shoulder. His coffee-dark eyes stayed on hers, tightening her chest. "How much for this drawing?" "I'll pay whatever price you ask." She shook her head. For the first time in months, a small smile touched her lips. "No need. Your smile has already paid." The space between them filled with a new light. Not from the sun, but from that moment itself. They sat together and began to speak. He gave his name, William Harlow, 36, eldest son of a ranching family outside town. He said he had left home after a bitter quarrel, seeking a little quiet. Clara told of sketching since childhood, using kitchen charcoal on scraps of cast-off paper. Even as the shadows stretched long, their talk did not end. His fingers tapped lightly against the sketch's edge, his eyes finding hers again and again, each glance stealing her breath. When the time came to part, he rose and carefully rolled the drawing, tucking it inside his vest. "I mean to keep this," he said, voice steady and low, "as I'd keep something rare." Clara nodded. For the first time in years, she left the garden not only with charcoal-stained hands, but with a heart stirred by strange, unlooked-for hope. William remained under the oak, watching until her figure slipped away beyond the narrow street. Against his chest, the fragile paper lay hidden, like a prayer answered. It was Tuesday afternoon when the church bell began to toll, and Clara heard a soft knock against the wooden door of room number 5 in Mrs. Henderson's old boarding house. The room held little more than a narrow bed, a small table, and a handful of sketches pinned loosely to the wall. Yet today, it became the place where her heart beat louder than ever before. She smoothed the tablecloth with trembling hands, hiding the restless flutter in her chest. She already knew who stood outside. When the door swung open, William Harlow appeared in the dim hallway light. He still wore the same earth-brown vest, though dust from the road clung faintly to it, his boots carrying the scent of horse and sun. He tipped his head in greeting, a smile only flickering at the edge of his mouth. "Forgive me if I intrude," he said, voice rough and low. Clara stepped back and widened the door. "Please come in. The room is small. Don't mind it." He entered, his eyes moving over the neat bed, the sagging bookshelf, the wooden box of charcoal and paper. On the walls hung sketches of Millbrook, its church steeple, its wooden fences, even the half-finished drawing of a shoeshine boy. William gave a small nod, his quiet attention stirring both pride and unease in her chest. She placed a kettle on the table and poured into 2 chipped porcelain cups. Steam curled upward, fogging the small window pane. They sat across from one another, no more than half an arm's length apart. Clara felt her hands go cold, her heart hammering in her ribs. William turned the cup in his hand. His tone was gentle. "You said before that you learned to draw with kitchen charcoal. But to make work like this, it must be more than skill. It must be something deeper." Clara lowered her eyes. The heat of the cup flushed her cheeks. She knew this was the moment. remain silent as she had for years, or open her heart at last. In Kansas, she began, voice unsteady, I was the daughter of a preacher. My father spoke of faith and mercy every Sunday, and I believed I would have a love as pure as the scripture promised. Her words caught. A shadow passed through her eyes. There was a man. He pursued me, promised marriage, sat in my parents' parlor like a gentleman. I trusted him. I gave him everything. William did not move, only watched her, his dark brown gaze still and deep as a river. But then, her voice broke. The cup set down with a faint crack. 2 weeks later, I heard him at the saloon, drunk, telling the whole town about my body, about how I cried, how I trembled. They turned it into a song, a joke, gave me a name to mock. Her hands twisted in her skirt, chest heaving. My father heard. He called me shame, cast me out with $50. Since then, I've been here. Alone. Silence pressed the room. Only the clock ticked on the wall. Clara turned her face aside, bracing for disgust in his expression. Instead, she felt the warmth of a hand covering hers. William said nothing at first. His fingers closed gently, firmly enough to tell her he would not let go. A shiver raced her spine. For the first time in years, she felt a touch free of lust, free of contempt, only presence, a wordless vow. I believe you. She lifted her gaze. His eyes held no pity, only a slow burning anger for the man who had betrayed her, and a compassion that struck her heart. That man, William said softly, is not worth naming. And a father who prized honor above his daughter, he lost what was most precious. Clara's throat locked. Tears welled and fell, but with them came a fragile smile. For the first time, someone had stood on her side. William did not release her hand. Instead, he turned it gently, his thumb brushing the blue vein at her wrist. A small gesture, yet enough to send tremors through her, as if cold wind had struck bare skin. Clara, he murmured, voice deep, steady. You are not alone anymore. The little room seemed to shift. The lamplight cast shadows across their faces, weaving them together. Clara felt she sat at a threshold. One side her disgrace, the other a fragile beginning. She steadied herself with the cup, whispering, You carry something too, don't you? I can see it. The bearing of a man who is running from something. William gave a faint smile, but it never reached his eyes. Perhaps. But tonight, I'd rather listen to you. Your story doesn't make you less. It shows me a woman who has lived, endured, and still dares to draw beauty into this world. The words silenced her. They were the words she had longed for, yet never thought she would hear, from a man almost a stranger. They stayed late into the night, their silences carrying more meaning than speech. Sometimes their eyes met, then slipped away. Sometimes his hand shifted closer, forcing her to draw breath to keep steady. When the clock struck 11, William rose. I must go. Before Mrs. Henderson begins to wonder, Clara walked him to the door. His tall frame cast long against the dim hallway. Before stepping away, he brushed her arm, briefly, but enough to set her body alight. Thank you, he said, for trusting me with your story. The door shut, leaving Clara pressed against the wood, her hand trembling where he had touched. Something inside her was changing, something like hope, the kind she thought had long since died. That night, wind swept down from the western mountains, carrying a chill that slipped through every crack in the door. Clara sat at the small wooden table, charcoal in hand, yet unable to draw a single line. Her mind circled back to the moment in the boarding room the night before. His eyes, his warm hand covering hers. The sting of old shame seemed to soften, giving way to something unfamiliar. Trust. When the town hall clock struck 8, a knock sounded at the door. Clara startled, then quickly rose to open it. William Harlow stood there, shoulders dusted from the road, eyes tired yet brightening at the sight of her. "Forgive me, I'm late," he said. "It's nothing," Clara smiled softly, stepping aside. "Please come in." They sat again at the table, tea poured as before. But tonight, the air carried weight. William turned the cup in his hands, as if searching for an answer inside. "Clara," he began, voice low, "I must tell you something." About my family, Clara leaned closer, listening. "I am the eldest son," William said. "In my family, that means duty, to inherit, to protect the name, and to marry first. My parents believed that if my younger brother were to wed before me, the world would think something was wrong with me, that I was unfit, or flawed in some way that kept me from being chosen. And they will not allow such a thing." His gaze drifted into the distance. "My brother Clement has asked for the hand of the woman he loves. Her name is Sarah. I have seen the truth in their eyes, Clara, their devotion. Yet my parents forbid it. They say until I marry, he cannot. They have turned his happiness into a burden strapped across my back." Clara's chest tightened. Memories of her own father rose sharp and bitter, a man who placed honor above love, who had called her shame and cast her out. She remembered the cold look in his eyes as he sent her away. She sighed, her eyes glistening. "Strange. You speak of your family, yet I hear an echo of mine. Different in circumstance, but the same in this, that those closest to us will sacrifice us for the sake of pride." William turned back to her, their eyes locking. Silence stretched between them, long enough for Clara to feel an invisible cord drawn taut between them, a bond of understanding that needed no words. He reached out, this time without hesitation, placing his broad hand atop hers. The contrast was stark, her dark skin beneath his strong palm, yet the harmony was undeniable. "Clement thinks me stubborn," William murmured. "He does not see that I am only trying to protect my freedom. I cannot marry to please my parents, and I will not take a woman I do not love, only to uphold a hollow tradition." Clara trembled, yet she did not pull away. She glanced down, watching as his thumb brushed lightly across the back of her hand, slow, steady, as though to calm her. "You are not wrong," she whispered. "They may call it stubbornness, but I know it for what it is, courage. I wish, in those days, my father had chosen me instead of the reputation he clung to." William tilted his head, his deep brown eyes fixed on her face. "Your father lost that chance, but I will not repeat his mistake. I mean to follow my heart, not command." His words lifted her gaze. Their breaths were close enough that she could feel the warmth of his mouth in the space between them. Neither moved, caught in the pull of one another's eyes. Time held still. Then William tightened his grip slightly. his voice falling into the cadence of a vow. Clara, I want you to know you are no disgrace to me. I see a woman strong, honest, and beautiful in a way this world is too blind to recognize. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks, but her smile shone through. And I see in you a man willing to stand against his own family, to guard what is right. They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand, breath mingling in the narrow room. No more words were needed. Their eyes spoke what their lips did not. At last, William rose. He did not release her hand at once, but let his fingers slide slowly away, as though reluctant to break the fragile cord between them. Before leaving, he paused at the door and turned back. Tomorrow, I'll come again, if you'll have me. Clara's heart thudded hard as she nodded. I'll be waiting. The door closed, leaving only the faint warmth of tea in the air and the fire of his touch still burning across Clara's skin. She knew then something had shifted, not only in her heart, but in the fate waiting ahead. From the evening William first held her hand, Clara's life seemed to fall into a new rhythm. Each day, once his work at the ranch was done, he would find his way to the small garden or her shabby boarding room. Little by little, their meetings lost the look of chance, becoming a habit, one both of them awaited. Some afternoons they walked side by side down dusty streets, close enough that silence felt like company. William often recited a line or two of poetry from the book he carried. Clara would smile, letting his rough, steady voice blend with the sound of their footsteps and the wind. At times she sketched his figure on paper, the cowboy hat shining in the sun, the broad shoulders standing firm. Small moments became milestones in Clara's heart. Once, when the wind tore her scarf loose, William caught it, wrapping it carefully back around her neck. Another time, seeing his collar askew, she found her hand reaching to fix it. Her fingers brushed the warm skin at his throat. William looked at her with the briefest smile, and Clara flushed, dropping her eyes. Sometimes, as she bent over her sketches, a curl of hair would fall across her brow. William would brush it aside, fingertips grazing her cheek. The light touch sent her heart spinning. They both pretended it was nothing, though the air between them carried a quiet flame waiting to break free. Of course, Millbrook was no town of blind men. People began to whisper. Some eyes followed Clara with sharp judgment whenever she walked beside a Harlow son. Laughter echoed from the saloon, half-hidden words carried down the street. Yet for the first time in her life, Clara felt no fear. For when William took her hand in public, he did not let go no matter how many eyes looked on. One late summer afternoon, they wandered farther, out past the town to the grassy slope of the hills. Sunset spread red across the sky, mirrored in a small pond below. Clara brought her sketchboard, while William lay stretched on the grass, hands folded behind his head, eyes on the fading clouds. Clara tried to draw, but her focus broke each time her gaze drifted toward him. His face was at peace, free from the weight he carried each day. Evening breeze ruffled his shirt, carrying scents of dry grass, leather, and something about him that tightened her throat. Her hand shook on the paper, lines wavering. Her eyes returned again and again to him. The straight nose, the parted lips, the long lashes casting shadows. Too still, too quiet, and it made her chest ache. Without thinking, Clara set her board aside. She leaned down inch by inch, almost afraid of herself. Her lips brushed his, light as the touch of a butterfly. She pulled back quickly, breath racing, cheeks burning. But in that instant, William's hand caught her wrist, strong and sure. His eyes opened, dark and deep, pulling her in like a current. "Is that all?" His voice was rough, shaking, as if held back too long. "I want more." "That is not enough." Before she could answer, he rose, broad frame shadowing hers, pressing her gently back into the grass. Clara closed her eyes, lips parted in surrender. His mouth found hers, not fleeting now, but deep, long, sweet, like rain breaking a drought. Her heart pounded wild, every part of her lit aflame. She wrapped her arms around his neck, drawing him closer. William kissed her with hunger and care, fierce yet tender, as though he feared breaking her. The soft grass beneath, the blazing sky above, everything else vanished until only the two of them remained. When he pulled away, their breaths came heavy, eyes locked, nothing left unspoken. Clara trembled, but in that trembling was a joy she had never known. "William," she whispered, though he silenced her with another kiss, slower, gentler, carrying the weight of a promise. "We belong to each other." The sunset faded, shadows creeping across the hillside. Yet in their hearts, something had taken root, something no rumor could crush, no fear could chase away. That evening, the sky changed faster than usual. Dark clouds rolled down from the mountains, swallowing the sunset in a single breath. Clara and William were walking the dirt road back toward town, their conversation still unfinished, when the first strong gust swept in carrying the sharp scent of rain. "We'd better hurry," William said, his eyes on the darkening sky. Clara caught his hand, small but firm, and pulled him into a run along the long street. By the time the first heavy drops fell, they had reached the porch of Mrs. Henderson's worn boarding house. They rushed inside, breathless, hair and clothes soaked through. Room number 5 was no stranger to William, yet stepping into it that night felt different. Perhaps it was the relentless drumming of rain on the roof, or the thick darkness pressing against the windows. Either way, the little room had become its own world, belonging to them alone. Clara moved quickly to the fireplace, tossing in more wood. The flames leapt high, golden light spilling over the walls, though it could not chase away the damp chill. She turned back, her eyes unsteady but resolute. "Your clothes, they're drenched." "Hang them by the fire." William hesitated, then nodded. He peeled off his cloak, his shirt, each layer heavy with rain. Clara handed him a thick towel, which he wrapped at his waist, while the wet fabric was draped over the rack by the flames. Heat rose, steam curling into thin ribbons of smoke. Clara shivered in her own sodden dress, the fabric clinging cold against her skin. I must change as well. Excuse me." She pulled a pale gray nightdress from her wooden chest and stepped into the corner behind a rough curtain. William sat down, but his eyes betrayed him. Her silhouette flickered against the cloth, every movement outlined as she pulled the wet dress over her head. Each shift of her body traced into clear curves, and William swallowed hard, unable to look away. Clara felt it too. Her skin burned, not from the fire but from his unseen gaze she knew followed her every gesture. She understood that not a single motion escaped him. When she stepped out, her hair hung damp and loose over her shoulders, strands clinging to her brown cheeks. The nightdress, though modest, fit close, shaping her softness. Firelight kissed the droplets on her skin, turning them into jewels. William rose without thinking. The room was small, and space narrowed to a single arm's length. Clara crossed slowly to the table, laying her wet dress upon it. The silence between them stretched taut, like a string drawn to breaking. "Thank you for always listening to me," Clara said softly, her voice clear in the room where only the rain answered. "I never thought a man would look at me the way you look at me." William stepped closer, his breath grazing her cheek. "I don't see you as others do. I see you as you are. And that makes me want more." Clara lifted her eyes to his. The dark depth of his gaze sent shivers through her. She tried to smile, but her lips parted instead, carrying words that would not form. A droplet slid from her hair down to her collarbone. William reached, brushing it away. The touch was fleeting, yet hotter than the fire. Clara drew a sharp breath, chest rising fast. The distance between them vanished until she could hear the beat of his heart. She knew that if she closed her eyes, just a little more, and their lips would meet. The moment hung in the small room as if it might last forever. Clara heard the rain hammering the porch, each drop on the roof like a drumbeat, urging on two hearts trembling at the edge of a final boundary. A droplet slid from her hair down her neck. Last time, William had only brushed it away. This time, he did not lift his hand. He bent low, lips touching her wet skin, drinking in the drop as if it were treasure. Clara shuddered. A soft, unbidden sound broke from her lips, fragile, startling even to her own ears, yet natural, like a sigh after laying down a heavy burden. William lifted his head, eyes burning. "Clara." Before she could reply, his hand slid behind her neck, drawing her close. The distance vanished. His mouth took hers, this time without hesitation. The kiss was fierce, deep, sweet enough that Clara felt herself dissolve. His breath poured hot and urgent against her. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her body to his. All the restraint they had carried broke loose in that instant. He kissed her like a fawn dying of thirst who had found a spring. Yet beneath the hunger lay gentleness, as though he wanted both to devour her and to protect the tender places of her heart. They stumbled backward until her legs brushed the small bed. William eased her down onto the thin mattress, his frame lowering above hers. She gazed up, breath ragged, dark eyes trembling in the firelight. "Are you afraid?" he asked, voice rough. Clara shook her head. "Not of you." William gave a broken smile, strained with desire. His lips pressed to her forehead, then her cheek, before claiming her mouth again. Kiss after kiss, tangled and burning. His hand traced downward, over the curves her nightdress barely concealed. Clara closed her eyes, surrendering to the rush of sensation, awkward, aching, but full of yearning. Her own hands fumbled along his shoulders, then down his back, trembling but unwilling to retreat. Unlike the man who had betrayed her past, William did not seize. Every touch was a question, a silent request, and only when she answered with quickened breath, with a tightening of her grip, did he move further. Clara felt the difference in every stroke. This was not someone taking, but two souls giving. Each kiss, each caress spoke like dialogue, an assurance that she was worthy, worthy of love, of tenderness. The fire cracked, light spilling gold over their skin. Cloak, towel, nightdress, all fell aside, useless shells shed to the floor. Only two bodies remained, pressed close, heat mingling with the faint scent of rain. Clara gasped as his mouth trailed her neck, her shoulder, down to places she had never given with trust before. William lifted her face, eyes both tender and aflame. "You are so beautiful," her voice caught. "Please, don't leave me." He answered with another kiss, deeper, longer, carrying the weight of a vow. When at last they joined, Clara felt as if every shattered piece of her past was being knit back together. Each movement, each heartbeat, testified to a love unlike anything she had known, not born of possession, but of a bond between souls. Outside, the rain softened, fading into a distant murmur. In the small room, their gasps and whispered cries filled the air. Time fell away, leaving only the present, two broken hearts finding one another. When it was over, they lay spent, side by side beneath a thin blanket. William drew her close, her cheek resting against his chest, where his heartbeat thudded steady and strong. The safety of it brought tears to her eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. He pressed a kiss into her damp hair, whispering, "I love you, Clara. From the moment you gave me that sketch, I knew." She lifted her face, eyes shimmering. "I love you too. For the first time, I believe in love." The sky outside still held its dark clouds, but in that small room the fire burned bright, and two hearts, long wounded, had finally found where they belonged. The news came on a morning that seemed like any other. William had just returned to the ranch after days away when his younger brother Clement was waiting by the stables. Clement's face was tight, but his eyes blazed bright. "Will," he said quickly, "I'm marrying Sarah." This Saturday, William froze. The words cut the air like a knife. Clement pressed on, his voice firm. "Whether father and mother approve or not, I'll wed her. I won't wait any longer." The words spread through the ranch like wildfire. Within an hour, everyone knew. And of course, so did their parents. Their father, Rufford Harlow, thundered with rage. "All of this is your fault, William. If you had obeyed, married first, Clement would never have shamed this family like this." Their mother, Melinda, did not shout as her husband did, but her eyes brimmed with disappointment. "You are the eldest. The family's honor rests on you. How could you let things unravel this way?" William stood silent, fists clenched. Inside, pride swelled for Clement's courage to choose love. Yet alongside it churned a storm of guilt, condemned as the one who had brought shame. But worse followed. Word spread that William had been seen often at Henderson's boarding house. Curious eyes in town turned to whispers. Soon, they were no longer murmuring about his defiance of his parents, but about his bond with a poor black girl. The heir of Harlow Ranch and a woman like Clara Johnson, the gossip burned sharp. The next day, as Clara returned from the market, Melinda Harlow herself stood waiting at her door. Dressed in a black velvet cloak, she carried the stern bearing of a Western matron, her eyes as cold as a blade. "Miss Johnson," her voice struck like a hammer, "I'll speak plain. Whatever you have with my son, it ends." At once Clara froze. "Ma'am, do not feign innocence." "I know. The whole town knows. My son is heir to the largest ranch in this region. He has duty, obligation. And you?" Melinda's eyes narrowed, cutting deep. "A black girl, with no name, no fortune, nothing but charcoal-stained hands. Do you think you are worthy? Each word was a slash. Clara gripped her skirt tight, her heart lancing with pain. I do not hate you personally, Melinda went on, but I will not allow my son to ruin our family, our honor, and his future over infatuation. Better you walk away of your own will, otherwise I'll see to it myself. With that, she turned, her steps sharp on the stairs, leaving Clara trembling as if caught in a storm. That night, Clara could not draw. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Melinda's cold gaze and heard her bitter words. Old shame came flooding back, choking her breath. When William knocked, Clara did not open. "Clara," his voice called, steady, patient. "I know you're in there." "Please let me in." She sat on the floor, clutching her knees, tears falling. Each knock, each plea tore at her, for she feared that if she opened, she would lose the strength to let him go. The second day, he came again, still knocking, still calling her name. But she stayed silent, heartbreaking. On the third day, Clara stepped into the hall and found him waiting. He looked worn, hollow-eyed from sleepless nights. Before she could turn away, William caught her hand and held tight. "Clara, why are you avoiding me?" Her voice shook as she tried to pull free. "William, what we have, it cannot go on. Your family, your mother has made it clear, I don't care." His tone hardened, fire burning in his dark eyes. "I don't care what they think." "I care only for you," Clara broke, tears spilling. "But I won't let you choose between me and your family. I know what it is to be cast out. I cannot let you suffer the same." William gripped her hand tighter, warmth flooding up her arm. "I will not leave you, Clara. Even if the whole world stands against us, I will not." His gaze held hers, fierce, unwavering, until she felt herself melting. She wanted to believe, to lean into his promise, yet Melinda's shadow and her cruel words echoed still. The hall was narrow, the oil lamp casting its glow across his face, his steady eyes, his clenched hand, his body a wall of shelter. Clara looked up at him, lips trembling without sound. William bent his forehead to hers, breath warm against her cheek. "Trust me. Do not step back. I promise. I'll stand by you. Always." In that moment, Clara knew that though the storm of prejudice raged outside, within his arms she had found a place to stand firm. That afternoon, the sky shone unusually clear. After the long rains of the past days, the heavens seemed washed clean, golden sunlight spilling bright across every rooftop. Clara sat at her small table in the boarding room, charcoal sketch half finished before her, though her heart was far from steady. Since her encounter with William's mother, it felt as though a stone lay heavy on her chest. She loved him, yet before her loomed a wall of prejudice. A knock came at the door. Clara looked up, hesitated, then rose to open it. William stood there, eyes dark and steady, his broad shoulders bearing the wear of a long road. Yet in his gaze she saw something new, a resolve no longer hidden. He stepped inside without a word, only stood there watching her for a long breath. Then suddenly, William dropped to one knee before her. "Clara," his voice was low, trembling slightly, "I've thought long and hard about my family, about the gossip. But in the end, only one thing is certain. I cannot live without you." Clara froze, her eyes wide. From his vest, William drew out a worn velvet box. Opening it, the firelight gleamed against a plain gold ring set with a single green stone. "This is a family heirloom. My grandmother wore it, then passed it to my mother. Now I want to place it in your hands." Clara stepped back, hand covering her mouth as tears welled too quickly to stop. "William," her voice broke, "do you know what storm this will bring? Your family, the whole town." He caught her trembling hands in his large fingers closing firmly. "I know, but I am not afraid. The only thing I fear is losing you." Clara shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "I once trusted a man, and for it, I lost everything. My honor, my family, my home. I don't know if I have the strength to trust again." William gripped tighter, his eyes never leaving hers. "But look at me, Clara. Not the man who betrayed you, not the voices of malice, me. The man who swore he would never leave you. Believe in my love." If only this once Clara trembled, torn between fear that urged her to retreat and the yearning that begged her to believe. William lifted the ring, his voice rough. "Be my wife, Clara. Let me claim you before the world as mine." Her tears fell onto his hand. She saw him kneeling. The man the town called stubborn, the man they called shamed for loving her. And yet, in his eyes, she saw something she had never seen in anyone: absolute conviction. "William," she whispered, "are you certain?" "I don't want to be your burden." He gave a soft laugh, his eyes alight like flame. "You are no burden. You are the reason I stand against them all." Clara's hand lifted trembling to his cheek. The warmth of his skin seemed to break apart the wall of fear within her. She nodded, whispering, "Yes, I will." William exhaled as though breaking free of chains. His hands shook as he slid the ring onto her finger, nearly fumbling, but at last it rested snugly in place. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she felt her bones might melt. She buried her face against his chest, her tears soaking his shirt. William pressed kisses into her damp hair, whispering again and again, "Thank you. Thank you for trusting me." In his embrace, Clara knew this choice was no easy one. Ahead lay storms, his family's fury, the town's whispers, the stares that would follow their every step. But she also knew one truth: some storms are worth facing, so long as love is the anchor. That morning, the town of Millbrook lay under a thin veil of mist, soft and pale as a bridal veil stretched across the sky. The chapel bell tolled slow and steady, each note a reminder of the special ceremony about to unfold. In the small room behind the sanctuary, Clara stood before an old mirror. Her wedding dress was simple: white fabric faded to ivory, sleeves edged with fine stitching. No lace, no glitter. But when she turned, the gown wrapped her slender frame, making her radiant in her own quiet way. Mrs. Henderson, the boarding house keeper, draped a thin shawl across Clara's shoulders. "You look beautiful," she whispered, eyes red with tears. "Your parents aren't here, but believe me, child, they were wrong not to see you today. I, for one, am proud." Clara nodded, lips trembling. The absence of her parents left a hollow ache, yet when she thought of William waiting outside, the emptiness filled with light. In the main hall, William stood tall, his plain brown suit pressed, hair combed neatly. Sunlight poured through stained glass windows, coloring his broad figure in shades of crimson and gold. Still, his dark eyes could not hide their sorrow. Neither his father nor his mother had come. They had refused to witness this union. Instead, the pews were filled with neighbors and friends. The old doctor, the storekeeper's wife, a handful of blacksmiths. They were not there out of curiosity, but because they believed love was worth more than rumor. When Clara stepped inside, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers in white and purple, the chapel fell silent. Those who had once scorned her, doubted her, now seemed hushed by the sight of her walking toward the man she had chosen. William turned, and in that instant, the world seemed to fall away. Only he and Clara remained, their eyes locked, and she forgot the bitter absence of her parents. Pastor Mackenzie began, his voice steady and warm. Today, before God and this community, we witness two free souls choosing to bind themselves, not by duty, not by force, but by love. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. She remembered the nights she had been cast aside, the storm when William held her close, the moment he knelt and placed a ring upon her finger. All of it led to this hour. "Do you, son," the pastor asked, "take this woman in plenty or in want, in sickness or in health, to love and be faithful until life's end?" William held Clara's gaze, voice firm as a vow. "I do." With all my heart, then came Clara's turn. The pastor repeated the words, and her voice trembled yet rang clear. "I do." Even if storms lie ahead, a hush swept the chapel. Then, as Pastor Mackenzie smiled and declared, "I pronounce you husband and wife before God," applause broke out, loud and joyful, like spring rain. William cupped Clara's face and kissed her. It was more than ritual. It was declaration. A defiance cast against every prejudice beyond those doors. Long, tender, and unyielding, it told the world, we choose each other, no matter the cost. From the pews came sobs and smiles. Some wiped their eyes, others nodded through their tears. Mrs. Henderson wept openly, murmuring, "They've done the right thing." Hand in hand, the couple walked down the aisle as petals of wildflowers rained over them. Not roses bought with coin, but blossoms gathered from meadows, yet more splendid than anything Clara had ever known. Outside, the sky was clear, sunlight spilling everywhere. William tightened his hold on his bride, leaning down to whisper, "You are no longer alone, Clara. From this day forward, we face all things, together." She nodded, her fingers trembling in his grasp, caught between joy and fear. She knew this wedding would not soften his parents' eyes, nor silence the whispers of town. But in his arms, she felt strong enough to endure. It was a wedding without parents, yet witnessed by a community that knew hardship and honored love. And in that truth lay its power, a story to stir tears, a reminder that resolve can be stronger than blood. After the simple wedding that drew so many tears, William brought Clara to a small house on Pine Street, not far from the town center. It was a 3-room cottage, its red roof weathered by time, wildflowers sprouting along the porch among the grass. It was not grand, nor wide like the family ranch, but it was enough, a place for 2 lives to begin anew. Clara stepped across the threshold, her fingers brushing the worn wood. Inside, all was plain. A tiny kitchen, a modest bedroom, a rough-hewn table with chairs. Yet to her eyes it shone like a palace, for this was the first time she truly had a home of her own. a place she could call hers. On their first day, they cleaned together. William hauled heavy trunks. Clara wiped down shelves and pinned sketches upon the walls. By afternoon, sunlight streamed through the windows, and they sat amid the mess, laughing in weariness. William suddenly drew her into his arm, pulling her close. She looked at him in surprise, then smiled, pressing her cheek against his chest to hear the strong rhythm of his heart. In the days that followed, life took on pattern. Clara tended the kitchen, though her clumsy dishes often left them laughing. Once she burned a stew so badly, the pot smoked like a chimney. William caught her shoulders and laughed, saying, "At least we still have bread and love." She swatted his chest in mock anger, but soon let him kiss her brow. William worked the small garden behind the house. He tilled soil, built a fence while Clara planted herbs and flowers. Mornings she would sketch him bent under the sun, hands dirty with earth, but face filled with peace. When he noticed, he would stride over, pretending to demand the drawing. She'd hide it behind her back, and he'd seize her hand, pulling her close. "Show me, or I'll take it another way." Then he'd kiss her until she laughed, the paper slipping to the ground. Clara found work at Mr. Morrison's art shop in town, selling supplies and sketching portraits for customers. Her drawings, alive with feeling, soon gained notice. Each evening she came home brimming with news of new commissions, her eyes shining with pride. William, too, gave of himself. Beyond working at the ranch, he spent evenings teaching letters to children of miners and laborers who could not afford schooling. In their little home, the wooden table became a classroom. Clara sat nearby, sketching, watching him patiently guide small hands through their first letters. More than once, she felt her heart swell near to bursting at the sight. Their intimacy was not only in the nights they shared, but in the simple touches of daily life. When Clara stooped to gather firewood, William steadied her with a hand at her back. When she arranged flowers in a jar, he came behind, arms circling her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. These light, sudden touches were enough to set her heart racing every time. One evening, as sunset blazed the sky, Clara sketched the wildflowers in the yard from the porch. William brought out 2 cups of tea, setting them down before quietly sitting beside her. After a while, he brushed back a loose strand of hair from her brow. She looked up, and their eyes met. No words were needed. The kiss came soft, lingering, bathed in twilight's glow, a kiss as gentle as their new home itself. The house was not free of hardship. The roof leaked when storms came. The stove sometimes faltered, and money was often tight. But these flaws became memories, for they faced them together. Once, in a downpour, they set pots under the dripping roof, half worried, half laughing. William teased, "Free music for you to sketch the rain." Clara laughed, curling into his arms, the troubles already lighter. For Clara, this peace was a miracle. Once scorned, cast out, she now sat in a warm kitchen, her husband stacking wood for the fire, a smile always ready for her. Her heart knew this was home, a place where she could breathe without fear, love without shame. In the evenings when all grew still, they often sat by the fire. William read aloud bits of poetry, while Clara sketched his figure in the flickering light. At times he would pause, pull her into his lap, and hold her tight. "I never thought I would have this," he murmured. Clara pressed her cheek to his chest, answering softly, "Nor did I ever dare to dream." Their first home was plain, small, imperfect. Yet in every moment, love crept through like green shoots in spring. growing strong, and Clara knew this peace was only the beginning. Storms would come again, but now they had a place to return, a shelter to face them side by side. In the first days of life together in their little house, Clara thought she had finally escaped the shadows of her past. Each morning she displayed her drawings at Mr. Morrison's shop. Each evening she returned to the warm hearth where William waited. But Millbrook had never been a kind place for a black woman. One morning she carried 3 new sketches of the prairie, a herd of horses, and the portrait of a little girl she was proud of. The sky was fair, the breeze soft. Confident, Clara set her work on display, but within minutes the whispers began. "Is she truly William Harlowe's wife?" murmured a woman in a wide hat, loud enough for Clara to hear. "Absurd," another scoffed. "That one stepping into the Harlowe family." Clara tried to ignore them, focusing on her sketchbook, but laughter rang out from the saloon across the street. "They say she draws well, likely good at other things too." More laughter followed, coarse and sharp. Heat rushed to Clara's face, her hand shaking around the pencil. She gathered her drawings, forcing her steps steady. Yet as she turned away, another woman's voice cut deep. "To let children see her out here. What shame." Clara froze, her vision blurring. Old memories struck back. The sting of ridicule, the pointing fingers. Her heart tore open anew. That evening, William came home from the ranch to find Clara sitting silent on the porch, her eyes red, the drawings clutched in her lap. He dropped to his knees before her at once. "What happened?" Clara shook her head, fighting tears. "I heard them. In the market. At the saloon. I thought things had changed, but to them I will always be a stain." William clasped her hands tight, his eyes dark with fury. "No one has the right to call you that. Clara, you are my wife, and I will defend you, even if it means standing against this whole town." The next day he walked beside her to the market. Clara begged him not to, but William was resolute. As they set up her sketches, a few sneers rose again. This time William did not stay silent. He strode forward, fire in his eyes. "Who said that?" The crowd hushed. A man stammered, We were only joking." "Joking?" William's voice thundered. "You mock my wife's honor? Poison children's ears with your filth? If anyone dares speak such words again, let him speak them to me. And I will teach him what shame truly is." The air grew taut as a drawn rope. Some lowered their heads, stepping back. Then, from the crowd, another voice rang out. "William is right." All turned. It was Mr. Harris, father of one of the boys William taught at night. He stepped forward, eyes sweeping the gathering. "My boy once could not read or write. Now he reads scripture to us because of William, and because Clara encouraged him to draw, he no longer hides his face in shame. These two deserve respect." Mrs. Lane came next. "Clara drew my daughter's portrait." Never seen that child smile so much as when she looked upon it. "Anyone who insults Clara insults my own." The murmur shifted. Parents added their voices. The mockery ebbed, replaced by nods and uneasy silence. Clara stood behind, tears blurring her sight. She had never imagined that ordinary townsfolk, once silent before prejudice, would speak up for her. William turned, taking her hand before them all. He lifted it high, his voice strong. "This is my wife, the one I chose, the one I love. To dishonor her is to dishonor me." The words cracked the wall of silence. Clara felt the warmth of his grip, a safety deeper than she had ever known. When they left the market, whispers did not vanish, but something had shifted. Where sneers had been, there were uneasy glances. Some even held a trace of respect. On the walk home, Clara's tears fell again, but now from gratitude. I never thought someone would stand for me so. William stopped, turned her to face him. He cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away the tears. Clara, you will never be alone again. No matter how fierce the storm, I will be your shelter. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart overflowing with love and thanks. The world outside still carried its storms of judgment, but she knew, beside this man, she had the strength to walk through them all. 2 years had passed since William and Clara spoke their vows beneath the humble chapel roof. Time had not silenced every whisper of scorn, yet their love, step by step, proved stronger than rumor. Clara had become known across the region as an artist. Her landscapes, hung in Mr. Morrison's shop, drew buyers from nearby towns. Even wealthy families from Denver traveled to Millbrook for her portraits. The name Clara Harlow slowly grew into a source of pride, and those who once mocked her were forced into silence. William, after long years of conflict with his father, finally took charge of the ranch. When pneumonia weakened Rufford Harlow beyond repair, it was William who kept the land alive through the harsh winter. Folks began to see that, scandal or not, he was a worthy heir. Then, one cold March day, the church bell tolled again, this time for Rufford's funeral. Inside the chapel, sorrow hung heavy. William stood beside Clara, her hand gripped firmly in his dark eyes filled with grief. Melinda Harlow, older now, her hair silvered by years and loss, approached them at last. She had never once acknowledged Clara, but here in the shadow of her husband's death, she stopped before them. Her voice was cracked with tears. Son, you and your wife must return to the ranch. I am old now, and I know I was wrong to fight against your love. Clara's breath caught, her eyes widening. William looked straight into his mother's face and saw no coldness there, only weariness and regret. He gave a slow nod, his grip tightening around Clara's hand as if to say, from this day forward, we stand together. And so they returned to the ranch. At first, cautious stares lingered, but little by little the sight of Clara at William's side, walking the pastures, sharing in decisions, became familiar. The workers respected her, not only as the mistress of the ranch, but as a woman who treated them with kindness and dignity. Clara kept her art alive. She set up a studio on the porch where afternoon light spilled golden across her table. She painted scenes of labor in the fields, horses running at sunset, children playing by the stream. Her canvases carried the breath of Colorado itself, and buyers came seeking the truth of the land in her work. William poured himself into the ranch, strengthening it with careful hands. Under his watch, the fields thrived, the herds grew strong, and harvests filled the barns. Slowly, the people of the valley looked upon the Harlow family with respect rather than suspicion. Evenings found the couple on their porch, hand in hand, watching the sky turn to fire and then fade. Clara sketched. William sat beside her. Words were few, for they needed none. One evening, William broke the silence. Do you ever think, we have overcome it all? Clara smiled faintly, her gaze on the distant ridge. Once I thought love only brought sorrow. But now, looking back, I see that the gossip, the prejudice, They no longer matter. What matters is that we are still here. Together, William's hand tightened around hers, his eyes burning in the light of dusk. Our greatest legacy is not the ranch, nor the painting sold for a price. It is this love, the proof that nothing can sever two hearts bound true. Clara leaned against him, her voice soft. If someday people tell our story, I want them to remember that we loved, and that we dared to love, against all odds. The sun dipped low, but its warmth lingered on the porch. Two souls once shadowed by scorn now sat side by side, testifying that real love not only weathers storms, but leaves behind a legacy, not of wealth, but of two hearts beating in unison. Some love stories need no grand wedding halls, no blessing from every kin. True love is written in clasped hands, in eyes that never turn away, even while the world whispers. William and Clara had endured it all, from mockery and exile to this quiet evening watching the sunset. They proved that happiness is not given by others but claimed by those who dare to believe. 2 years, then more, their love became a legacy, not in cattle herds or endless land, but in the proof that the human heart is stronger than prejudice. Love can cross lines of color, defy the chains of family, and outlast the cruel murmurs of society. When our own lives pass through turmoil, perhaps their story reminds us. What remains is not the slander, nor the fleeting applause, but a hand to hold at dusk, a shoulder to lean on when weary. And if you too believe that true love is the greatest legacy one can leave behind, share your thoughts below. Tell us your memories, the lessons you've carried through your own journey. And don't forget to press like, subscribe, and share, so that these Wild West love stories, simple, steadfast, and enduring, may reach more hearts. For somewhere out there, someone may still need the faith that love can outlast all storms, and that a warm sunset will always wait at the end of the trail.